It was just a normal Halloween night, until I knocked on that door. An old man opened it and said, "We've been waiting for you." From that moment, nothing in my town, or in my life, felt real anymore. I thought it was just a prank, until I realized something had followed me home. Greetings, every shadow hides a story. Welcome. Under the Bed. It happened in a small Pennsylvania town, the kind where everyone knows who lives on every corner and which porches are safe to step on. It was Halloween night, October 31st, a little after 9. The air smelled like cold leaves and damp costumes. I was 13, out with two classmates, Ryan and Mateo, dragging pillowcases heavy with candy and cheap plastic masks pushed up on our heads so we could breathe. We'd finished the familiar loop by the church and were daring each other to try the long road that ran past the old sawmill, the one parents told us to skip because the sidewalks were broken and the streetlights were far apart. That road ended at a house people pretended not to see. Weather-beaten siding curled up like scabs. A porch sagged toward the dirt. No pumpkins. No fake cobwebs. Just a black rectangle of door. Kids told stories about it, a family gone missing, a man who never left, a basement with shelves of jars. No one could agree on the details, but everyone agreed on the rule, don't knock. We joked about it on the walk, louder than we needed to be, the way you do when the night gets too quiet and your breath fogs like smoke. "If you're not scared," Ryan said, elbowing me, "you knock." "Just one knock," Mateo said. "Then we bail." I don't know why I went. Maybe because they were watching. Maybe because Halloween is a dare that smells like sugar. I crossed the yard, weeds scratching my ankles through my jeans, porch boards flexing under my sneakers. My hand lingered over the door, knuckles hovering, and I almost pulled back. Then I knocked twice. Hollow wood. A single moth battered itself against the porch light that wasn't even on. We waited. Ryan laughed nervously into the dark. "See? Nobody." The latch clicked. The door opened a few inches, and stale air spilled out, the kind that lives behind curtains for years. An old man stood there, thin shoulders and a washed-out shirt buttoned wrong, gray stubble on a jaw he hadn't bothered to shave for a long time. His eyes weren't milky or wild, they were clear, like old glass you can still see through. He didn't look surprised. He looked relieved. "We've been waiting for you, John," he said. My heart climbed into my throat. He'd said my name plainly, the way a teacher does at roll call. Ryan made a sound I'd never heard from him before. Mateo swore under his breath. I didn't move. The man leaned a little on the door, not opening it further, not closing it, just studying my face like he was checking a photograph against a memory. "I don't know you," I managed. He nodded as if that matched what he expected. Somewhere down the road a dog barked twice, far and small. The man tilted his head like he was listening to a clock only he could hear. "You should go now," he said softly. Ryan grabbed my backpack strap. "Dude, come on." The door stayed half open a second longer. Then, with a careful push, the old man eased it shut until the latch caught. No slam. No final word. Just the soft click of metal on metal. We ran. Across the yard, across the broken sidewalk, into the pool of the next streetlight like it could wash us clean. We didn't talk until we hit the corner by the sawmill sign. Ryan punched my arm hard enough to sting. "What was that?" "How did he know your name?" I said I didn't know. It was the only truth I had. We cut back toward town the long way, through blocks where plastic skeletons rattled in the breeze and porch lights still glowed warm. We said nothing to anyone. By the time I reached my street, there were just a few kids left in capes, their candy bags bumping against their knees. Mom's car was in the driveway. Our porch light was still on. Inside, the house felt too bright. Mom asked if I'd had fun. I said yes and set my pillowcase on the table to sort. We always did that, separate the chocolate from the hard stuff, check for open wrappers, count the good bars like treasure. I untied the knot I'd made at the top, tipped the bag, and let everything slide into a pile. Something hard and flat skidded out with the candy and tapped against the wood. Not a card. Not a flyer. Mom reached for it first, thinking it was a note from a neighbor. Then she stopped. Her face changed, color draining the way it does when someone stands up too fast. She didn't pick it up. I did. It was a photograph, the kind with scalloped white edges and a gloss that had gone dull. The corners were soft with age. A boy stood on a porch I recognized immediately, the bowed boards, the crooked rail, the same dead space behind a dark doorway. He was about my height, same messy hair that wouldn't stay down, a jacket like one you'd find in a thrift store now. He looked straight at the camera like it had interrupted him. If you skimmed it quickly, you could believe it was me. But it wasn't. The colors told me it wasn't. The light was wrong, thin and faded, the way old daylight looks when it gets trapped on paper for too long. Behind the boy, pinned to the far wall, I could just make out a calendar with a picture of a lake. A year printed small along the bottom edge, 1993. Mom sat down. Her chair creaked. "Where did you get this?" "It was in my bag," I said. "I swear." Her hand hovered over the photo but didn't touch it. "That house," she whispered. "That house was supposed to be empty." I told her everything, Ryan daring me, the knock, the old man, the sentence that knew my name, the careful way the door had closed. While I talked, she kept her eyes on the photo like it might move. When I finished, she finally looked at me, and I felt older in that second, like the night had stolen a piece I couldn't put back. "We're going to keep this," she said. "And tomorrow we're going to talk to someone about that place." I nodded, but my attention had shifted. On the bottom edge of the photograph, pressed into the emulsion, were 3 faint smudges. They looked like fingerprints, the kind you leave if you handle something with damp hands. I held it closer. The marks were darker at the tips, as if whoever touched it had just come in from the rain. Outside, somewhere down our street, someone knocked on a door, 3 steady taps, followed by the chorus of kids yelling trick or treat. It sounded normal. It sounded safe. I slid the photo back onto the table and told myself the old man had guessed my name, that it was a trick, that someone had slipped the picture into my bag as a prank. But when I went to empty the last of the candy from the pillowcase, my fingers brushed the inside seam and came away wet, as if the cloth had soaked up something colder than the night. Morning came gray and heavy, the kind that smells like wet pavement before it rains. I didn't sleep much. The photograph sat on my desk where I left it, half covered by a candy wrapper, as if hiding it could make it less real. Mom moved quietly in the kitchen, not humming like she usually did. The sound of the coffee maker seemed too loud. When I walked in, she was staring at her phone, scrolling through old local articles. "You said he knew your name," she reminded me without looking up. "And this photo? Are you sure it was in your bag?" "Yes," I said. My voice cracked. "Right at the bottom." She sighed, picked up the photo, and turned it toward the light. "That house used to belong to the Craven family," she said. "They disappeared when I was about your age. Halloween night, 1993. She tapped the edge of the photo. "This boy, he was their son. Peter. 13, same as you." The coincidence made my stomach twist. "You think the old man was him?" She shook her head. "No one ever found any of them. The house has been empty for decades. That should have been the end of it." But in the back of my mind, I kept replaying the way the man's voice had sounded, not ghostly, not strange, just tired. Like he'd been waiting to say those words for years. At school, things didn't feel right. My locker door creaked open by itself even though I knew I'd closed it. During math, someone whispered my name from the back of the room, clear and close, but when I turned, there was no one. Ryan and Mateo tried to joke about it, but I could see they were shaken too. "Maybe he was just some homeless guy," Ryan said at lunch. "You know, squatting there." "Then how did he know my name?" I asked. Mateo shrugged. "Maybe he heard your friends say it." That explanation was supposed to help, but it didn't. That night, I left the photo in the kitchen drawer. I told myself I wasn't afraid, just tired. Before bed, I checked the window. The yard was quiet, the streetlight soft. I closed the curtains and lay awake listening to the house breathe, the ticking of the heater, the hum of the refrigerator, the small familiar noises that should have meant safety. Then came the first whisper. It sounded like whine through the vent, faint, almost polite. My name. Once. Then again, slower. I sat up, holding my breath. Nothing moved. I switched on my lamp, the light buzzed weakly. The photo, I realized, wasn't in the drawer anymore. It was on my desk again. I told myself I must have left it there. But the edges were damp, leaving faint rings on the wood. I wiped them away, shoved the picture face down, and climbed back into bed. The next morning, Mom noticed the circles. "You spill water?" I lied and said yes. She didn't question it. But later that day, when she picked me up from school, she said she'd called a friend at the county office. The house was condemned years ago, she said. Nobody's lived there since. I nodded, staring out the window at the bare trees flickering past. Then who opened the door? She didn't answer. That evening, I did homework at the kitchen table. Around 9, the wind started up, rattling the gutters. I got up for a glass of water. When I came back, the photograph was gone from the desk. I looked under the papers, behind the chair, nothing. A small thud came from the front porch. I froze. Through the frosted glass of the door, a shape shifted, not a person standing still, but a flicker, as if someone had walked past slowly. I turned off the light, waited, and pressed my face close enough to the glass to feel the cold. The street was empty. When I opened the door, the wind pushed in leaves and something small hit my shoe. The photograph. It lay face up on the welcome mat, dry despite the drizzle. But it wasn't the same photo anymore. Now there were two people in it. The boy, and behind him, half hidden by the doorframe, the old man. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I just stared at their faces, the way the man's hand rested on the boy's shoulder. Mom came running when she heard the door. What happened? I handed her the photo. Her face went white again, paler than the first time. This wasn't like this before, she whispered. The wind died down as suddenly as it had started. The porch light flickered twice, then stayed on. That night, I dreamed of the house. I was standing on the porch again, the boards creaking beneath me. The door was open, and beyond it I could see a staircase. At the top, something moved, slow, deliberate steps descending. I tried to run but couldn't move. When the figure reached the doorway, I saw the same old man, only now his face wasn't tired. It was blank, smooth, like the photo had wiped him clean. He raised his hand and pointed at me. "You brought it back," he said. I woke up gasping. The room was dark except for the digital clock glowing 3:17 a.m. My window was open. The curtains stirred though there was no wind. On my desk, the photograph glimmered faintly in the dim light. A new mark had appeared in the corner, a wet fingerprint, larger than mine. I closed the window, stuffed the picture into a drawer, and pressed my hand against the wood until my fingers ached. I told myself morning would fix it. But deep down, I already knew the truth. Whatever had waited in that house was no longer there. It had found a way into mine. By Saturday morning, the storm had cleared. The sky was a pale, bruised gray, and the air felt sharp. Mom had left early for a shift at the clinic, leaving a note on the fridge, "Do not go near that house." I mean it. She underlined the last 3 words. I read it twice, but it didn't stop the itch in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photograph. The old man's hand on the boy's shoulder. The calendar on the wall. The way he had said my name. It wasn't just fear now, it was something heavier. Curiosity, maybe. Or the need to understand why he'd looked so sure when he saw me. By noon, I couldn't sit still. I packed my phone, a flashlight, and a small pocket knife from the kitchen drawer. Ryan and Mateo didn't answer my texts. I didn't blame them. The walk to the edge of town took 20 minutes. The road was quiet, no cars, just the sound of crows cutting across the fields. When I reached the old house, it looked worse in daylight, walls leaning inward, vines choking the windows, a roof that sagged like wet paper. The front door hung slightly open, swaying with the wind. I told myself I'd only look around, just enough to prove there was nothing there. The first thing that hit me inside was the smell, mold, dust, and something faintly metallic, like old coins. The air was colder than outside, still and thick. My footsteps made the floorboards creak. Wallpaper peeled in long strips, revealing wood beneath. On the table by the window lay a single object, an oil lamp with a cracked glass shade. "Hello?" My voice came out smaller than I expected. From deeper inside, a sound answered, a slow scrape, like furniture being moved. I followed it to a narrow hallway lined with picture frames. Most of the photos had faded to white, but one still held color. It showed a family, a man, a woman, and a young boy between them. The boy was the same one from the photo in my house. The scraping sound came again, from behind a half-open door at the end of the hall. I pushed it wider and froze. The old man was sitting in a chair by the fireplace, staring into cold ashes. His skin looked pale and paper-thin, his hands trembling slightly on his knees. For a moment, I thought he was a statue. Then he blinked. "You came back," he said, voice raspy but calm. "I just wanted to know who you are," I managed. "Why did you say you were waiting for me?" He nodded slowly, as if the question wasn't new. "Because every year, on this night, someone knocks. I never know who it will be, but they always come." "I came 3 nights ago," I said. He looked past me, eyes unfocused. "Yes. And you brought something with you." I shook my head. "I didn't bring anything." "You did," he whispered. "You brought the photograph." He stood, bones cracking with the effort, and gestured for me to follow. "You need to see." We walked down a short corridor that ended at a wooden door. Its handle was cold, damp with condensation. When he pushed it open, the smell grew stronger, rotted cloth and earth. The basement steps descended into darkness. I hesitated. "What's down there?" "The rest of them," he said. "The ones who came before you." I gripped the flashlight tighter and stepped down. The beam cut through dust and cobwebs, revealing shelves along the wall. On them were old toys, notebooks, backpacks, children's things, covered in grime. I felt my stomach twist when I recognized one of them, a blue bag with a stitched patch on the side. My bag. The same one I'd lost the night I knocked on his door. "How is that here?" I whispered. He didn't answer. He was staring at the far corner of the room, where the concrete met dirt. There were handprints, small ones, pressed into the wall as if someone had tried to claw their way out. I turned back toward him, but the man was gone. The door above me slammed shut. The flashlight flickered. I shouted his name, but only my echo answered. The air felt heavier with each breath. Then came the whispers again, soft, overlapping voices of children, dozens of them, circling me. "Don't move," one said. "He found you," another whispered. "You shouldn't have come back." The flashlight blinked once, twice, then went dark. I dropped to my knees, trying to find the steps in the blackness. My fingers brushed something cold, a photograph. I held it up even though I couldn't see it, and for a second I thought I heard my own voice whisper my name from somewhere behind me. A sound snapped, the basement door creaking open. Light spilled down the stairs. I scrambled up, nearly falling, and burst back into the hallway. The chair by the fireplace was empty. When I ran outside, the daylight looked different, faded, almost sickly. I didn't stop until I reached the edge of the woods. When I finally turned around, the house looked whole again, fresh paint, curtains in the windows, a car in the drive. A woman stepped onto the porch holding a small boy's hand. She waved. For a heartbeat, I thought it was safe. Then I saw the boy's face. It was mine. I stumbled backward, heart pounding, and when I blinked, the house was ruined again, boards split, windows broken. The porch was empty. I ran all the way home. Mom was already there, pacing by the window. "Where were you?" she shouted. But when she saw my face, her anger drained away. I opened my hand. The photograph was still there, smeared with dirt. Now it showed the same boy, but standing alone. The man was gone. That night, the silence inside our house felt heavier than any storm. The walls seemed to breathe, every tick of the clock echoed too loudly. Mom didn't ask questions when I got home. She just hugged me tight and whispered, "We're leaving that house alone, John. Promise me." I promised. But even as I said it, I knew the promise meant nothing. Sleep didn't come. Around midnight, I sat on my bed staring at the photograph. The boy in it looked slightly different now, his eyes were turned away, as if he'd begun to glance towards something outside the frame. I rubbed my thumb over the surface. The paper was cold, damp again, like it had just come out of the rain. The house groaned once, deep in the foundation. Then, from the hallway, came a sound, soft footsteps, slow and dragging. I thought it was Mom until I heard the whisper. It wasn't words at first, just a thin, broken hum, like someone trying to remember a tune. Then it shaped into my name. John. It came from near the kitchen. I stepped out of my room, heart hammering, and called, "Mom?" No answer. The whisper came again, this time closer, right beside my ear. The air felt suddenly cold, smelling faintly of wet earth and rust. I turned the corner, and the hallway light flickered once, then steadied. The photo had fallen from my hand. It landed face up, and I froze. The image had changed again. Now, behind the boy, I could see the shape of a staircase leading down into darkness. I didn't think, I ran. Straight into Mom's room. She was awake, sitting up in bed, pale, breathing fast. "I heard it too," she said. "Someone walking." Before I could speak, the house shuddered. A single sharp knock came from the front door. Then another. 3 in total. The same rhythm I'd heard that Halloween night. Mom grabbed her phone, but when she checked the security camera feed, the screen showed only static. I edged toward the window and peeked through the blinds. The street outside was empty, washed in pale yellow light. But on the sidewalk, directly across from our house, stood a figure, small, motionless. It looked like a child. Mom whispered, "Close the curtains." I did. But the knocking didn't stop. It grew faster, harder, until it felt like the whole door was shaking. Then suddenly, silence. We didn't sleep after that. Around 4 a.m., Mom made tea just to keep her hands busy. When the sky finally lightened, the world seemed normal again. She went to work, insisting daylight made everything safer. I wasn't so sure. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the photo. I noticed something new at the bottom edge, letters faintly written in pencil, almost invisible, "Come back." My skin prickled. I didn't remember seeing that before. And when I tilted the picture toward the light, the handwriting looked fresh, pressed into the surface as if by a shaking hand. That afternoon, Ryan texted me, "You okay? Heard you went back there." I wanted to say no, that I wasn't okay, that something had followed me home. But I didn't. I just typed, "I think it wants me to come back." Then I deleted it before sending. The rest of the day dragged. When evening came, I kept hearing faint noises from the walls, not scratching exactly, but tapping, slow and steady, like fingers on wood. I walked from room to room, pressing my ear to each wall. It always stopped when I got close. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I sat on the floor beside my bed with the flashlight in my lap, waiting. At 3:04 a.m., the light flickered. The photograph, lying beside me, began to curl at the edges as if heated from within. The tapping turned to whispers. First one voice. Then another. Then dozens. They weren't angry, they sounded sad, pleading. Fragments reached me. Help, trapped, he took us. I tried to speak, but my throat locked. My flashlight dimmed until only a weak halo remained. Then a face appeared in the reflection of the window, the old man. His lips moved slowly, soundlessly, before his voice filled the room. You woke them, John. The photograph slipped from my hands. It landed on the floor, and as it did, a thin crack opened in the plaster wall behind my desk. From inside came a soft, steady knocking, from within the wall itself. I backed away. The voices grew louder. One child's voice stood out, clearer than the rest. Help us close it. The floorboards under my feet pulsed, a slow heartbeat rhythm. The air turned thick with dust and cold. I shouted for it all to stop, and it did. Instantly. Silence. Then a single whisper, right behind me, tomorrow. I turned around, but no one was there. Only the photograph lying face down, a faint outline burned into the wood beneath it. I lifted it carefully. Now it showed the boy again, but he was standing in front of the same cracked wall I had just seen in my room. I didn't sleep that night. I sat with the lights on until dawn, watching the wall, waiting for it to move again. When Mom came in at sunrise, she looked exhausted too. I heard you talking, she said quietly. I wasn't, I whispered back. She rubbed her arms as if she were cold. It's not just you, John. Last night I dreamed of that house. I was calling your name, but it wasn't you who answered. We stared at each other in silence. The house creaked once more, and in the distance, a faint echo of a knock traveled through the floor. A year passed, but the nights never felt the same again. Every October carried a weight, a waiting silence in the air, like the town itself was holding its breath. We'd moved to another neighborhood, not far, but far enough that you couldn't see the old road or the outline of that house even on the clearest day. Mom said it was a fresh start. New school, new walls, new memories. She never mentioned the photo again, and I pretended to forget. But some things don't stay buried. Halloween came again, October 31st, exactly 1 year later. I was 14 now, taller, quieter, trying to act like last year hadn't happened. Mom decorated the porch with fake cobwebs and plastic pumpkins, keeping the lights bright so kids would come. She smiled like everything was fine, but her eyes kept flicking to the window every few minutes. That night was calm, no wind, no noise. Around 8 p.m., the last group of kids left. Mom poured tea, turned off the porch light, and said, "We did it. A normal Halloween." She went to bed early. I stayed up, watching a movie on my phone, trying not to think about that other Halloween, the knock, the voice, the photograph. At 11:58 p.m., the movie stopped. The screen froze, then went black. A faint tapping started from inside the wall, the same rhythm as before. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. My heart hammered. I reached for my phone, but it was dead. I stood still, listening. Then came another sound, a soft knock, not from the wall this time, but from the front door. 3 knocks. Precise. Familiar. I crept to Mom's room. She was asleep, breathing steady. I didn't want to wake her. Maybe it was a kid playing a prank. Maybe someone had the wrong house. I walked toward the hallway, every step heavier than the last. Through the glass of the front door, I saw movement. A small figure stood outside. My first thought, a trick-or-treater. But there were no costumes now, no porch lights anywhere on the street. The figure didn't move. It just stood there, facing the door. I switched on the porch light. The bulb flickered once, then steadied, and I froze. The figure wasn't a stranger. It was a boy, about my age, maybe younger, wearing an old-fashioned Halloween costume, a faded paper mask with cracked edges. He looked soaked, like he'd walked through rain. And he was holding something in his hand. A photograph. When he lifted his head, the mask tilted enough for me to see his face underneath. My breath caught in my throat. It was me. The same hair, the same eyes, only duller, lifeless. The boy smiled, and the porch light went out. I stumbled backward, knocking a vase off the table. Mom shouted from her room, "John?" But before she could reach me, the front door swung open by itself, slow, deliberate. The hallway filled with that familiar cold air, heavy and still. Mom appeared beside me, eyes wide. "Don't go near it," she yelled. But I couldn't move. Something was calling from outside, a faint chorus of voices, all whispering at once. They weren't angry, just insistent. "Come home, John. It's time." The figure on the porch stepped forward. He wasn't holding the photo anymore. It was lying just inside the doorway. The edges were damp, the surface glistening. Mom grabbed my arm, pulling me back, but the floor beneath us groaned, the same sound I'd heard in that old house a year ago. I looked down. Water was spreading across the floorboards, thin and black, seeping from the photo itself. Reflections rippled inside it, the old house, the hallway, the open door. And standing there, behind the frame of that reflection, was the old man. He raised his hand. "It's done," he said quietly. Then the photo split apart, the image tearing itself in half. The lights flickered, the air twisted, and everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on a porch. The boards were old, warped. The smell was the same, dust, mold, rain. In front of me stood the old man. His voice was calm. "You see now," he said. "It never leaves. It just waits." Behind him, through the cracked doorway, I saw children, dozens of them, standing silently in the dim light. Some smiled. Some just stared. Among them was the boy with my face, holding the torn photo. I turned to run, but when I looked out into the street, there was no town. No lights. Just endless fog rolling through black trees. The old man spoke again. "We've been waiting for you, John." He stepped aside, and I felt myself pulled forward, weightless. The door closed behind me with a dull click. The next morning, police cars surrounded our house. Mom sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the empty doorway. She told them her son had vanished sometime after midnight. The security camera footage showed nothing, only static at 11:58 p.m., then silence until morning. When they searched the house, they found a single photograph lying on the kitchen table. It was old, discolored, edges torn. It showed a group of children standing in front of a wooden house, all smiling faintly. Among them, near the center, stood a boy who looked just like me, holding a pumpkin in one hand. At the bottom of the photograph, scrawled in faded pencil, were 3 words. "We're still here."